scandal.
Well, I agree with you, but also I get very concerned, as you do, I know. This shows, wow, we were really right. I mean, this is the same crew that was all over Oklahoma City. I know WorldNetDaily's one of the few places that's got credibility, that's had the courage to report on what really went on there. But layer after layer of government-controlled operations, I mean, you can't doubt that. And, of course, now that's what lends so much credence to other false fags.
If you go back to Oklahoma City, by the way, Alex, that's the first time when the media and the political establishment started pointing the fingers at guys like you and me and even Rush Limbaugh. You know, this was a right-wing thing that was going, a right-wing anti-government thing. Now we hear that almost on a daily basis from the government. Where's the danger to Americans coming from? Latest DHS report once again shows it's from, you know, right-wing people who they value their freedom. I mean, can you imagine? Are the founding fathers not turning over in their graves when they hear government officials saying that the problem in America is we got too many freedom-loving people?
That's like saying the problem is the founding fathers, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. They're saying the 4th of July is terrorist. In fact, here it is. Americans, this is from the report, who believe their way of life is under attack. You have to be under a rock not to know that. Americans who are fiercely nationalistic. I mean, what's the point of having a nation? As opposed to universal or international in orientation, meaning let foreign banks run you. Here's another one. People who consider themselves anti-global, presumably those who are wary of the loss of sovereignty. And here's the best. Americans who are suspicious of centralized federal authority. That's all the founders. Anyone with a common sense or room temperature IQ and above. Americans who are reverent, this is a quote, of individual liberty. Oh, my gosh, don't be reverent of individual liberty. This is terrible.
You know, and previous versions of these reports have also singled out people who believe in the Bible and returning military veterans. In other words, all of the people, you know, who we value in this country, people like you and I value in this country, people who, you know, understand that we're supposed to be a self-governing nation of responsible individuals who take care of themselves and are self-reliant and don't depend on government, we're the problem. We're the enemy.
Because the enemy has taken over and is diametrically opposed to any basic freedom evidenced. But, I mean, even though you're informed, I'm informed, still to see it all happening, world government, run by banks, government takeover of healthcare, attacks to the insurance companies, with these idiots thinking they're about to get a free handout. What is your, well, I mean, getting back to the false flags. This is a false flag. Fast and Furious is a staged, slow burn terror attack, tens of thousands of guns and hand grenades to Mexico to blame the Second Amendment. They got caught. As you know, their own memos, even CBS News covers it, saying we're going to use this to get anti-gun legislation passed. They're caught. They're caught.
They're caught. But what's happening? I mean, you know, I know there's things taken. This whole congressional investigation to me has taken way too long. Way too long. We got an election coming up in November. When are we going to see some justice done here? When are we going to see some results from all this?
Well, we're seeing in the court of public opinion, though, nothing has woken up people like Fast and Furious, in my view. And now Obama legalizing the illegals, shutting down power plants outside of law, and the health care. Your view, your breakdown, your boil down on the flip-flopping of the Supreme Court, what your intel, because you're right there, right by the Supreme Court in Virginia. What do you think really happened?
Well, my intel wasn't very good because I didn't expect. Listen, I'm telling you, I never thought that John Roberts was, you know, he was never, in my opinion, a Scalia, an Alito, or a Thomas in his view. He's always been more of an establishment Republican, and you know, so I never had high expectations from him. But I thought, you know, if there was going to be a problem in this case, that it would more likely be Kennedy than Roberts, who, you know, if you look at their previous rulings, Roberts generally was with the other three. Kennedy was the one swing vote. So who would have expected that we'd get Kennedy and we'd lose Roberts? I don't think anybody saw that coming. But now, of course, as people are doing the diagnosis on this, we learned that you know, he was with Scalia, and he somehow got seduced liberals to go with them. This happens. When you're in Washington too long, it happens. You know, what do they call it in the Washington Post when somebody with conservative instincts starts to go the other way? They call it, oh, he's growing. He's growing, right? It means he likes to be invited to the right cocktail parties in Washington and likes being taken seriously by the major media. That's what it means.
But that's all coming to an end. Being taken serious more and more by the mainstream prostitutes is a death sentence with the heart of this country. And that's accelerating. What do you expect the power structure to do? Because in my view, in my analysis, their credibility is draining away. I mean, how many armored vehicles, how many hollow point bullets, how many helicopters, how many drones, how many SWAT teams? I mean, we know the system knows we don't like them and that they have a 9% approval rating in Congress, and their answer is, we're going to arm to the teeth against you and say that Mom and Apple Pie and George Washington are terrorists.
That's right. Well, you know, I think like you, I have a lot of optimism because I have a lot of faith, not necessarily in the majority of the American people anymore, but in a very, very healthy segment of the American people who are not going to take this stuff laying down. By the way, Alex, remember when you were in my office in Virginia, one of my crew asked if you had ever seen a drone, and you answered no, you hadn't. I get back home within a week or two of that conversation. I'm taking my dog for a walk, and guess what I see right over the tree line, right above my head, is a drone.
Incredible.
So if anybody calls you crazy, Alex, for talking about the drones, you can just send them my way, and because I've seen it with my own eyes. I only wish I had my cell phone camera to get a picture of it. That's why I haven't said anything about it publicly before.
Now, how high was it? Was it a low?
Oh, it wasn't high at all. And you know, I didn't even know. At first, I couldn't even make out what it was because it had such a weird sound. It sounded like there was a lawnmower over my head. And it looked like nothing I had ever seen before, so I immediately jump on the internet. I start looking up drones, and I'm seeing things that resemble what I saw. And one of the characteristics I saw described was it can sound like a lawnmower over your head, for crying out loud. So that was my confirmation that for some reason, and then I later found out that in Northern Virginia here, even the police departments are using drones.
And now they want to arm them, and all over the country they've been using them for surveillance. We found the EPA documents where in 2009 they were doing it, and they ran a national story saying InfoWars ran a hoax, Drudge picked it up, so did WorldNetDaily, all these other evil publications, hundreds of articles, nightly news shows, Media Matters, what a joke. And then they played a straw man because the article we wrote also linked to a local story in the Dakotas where they were, and other states where they were complaining about calling them drones because they just arrested those cattle rustlers, alleged cattle rustlers, using a predator. But then they conflated it, mixed it in with the EPA Cessnas they're using to spy on farmers. The point is they're spying with everything, and they spun it with a straw man that we'd made it up when they're announcing 30,000 of them in the FAA budget in the next decade, and they're launching all over the place. I mean, here's another example of this, and I want to ask you, what is this tactic? I mean, what type of disdain do they have for the public, Joseph Farah of WorldNetDaily.com? Because the Inspector General comes out, they have the Supreme Court say it is a tax that the IRS takes from you, but then they call it a penalty or something. And then Obama's people say, no, it's not a tax, it's a penalty. And then they play this mind game. I mean, what is this? Like, there's not drones, there's not an IRS tax in healthcare.
That's right. Who are you supposed to believe, me or your own eyes? You know, Obama tells us, no, it's not a tax. Then we get the Supreme Court saying it's constitutional because it's a tax. You know, I mean, it is just unbelievable. It's, you know, Orwell was just a little bit early, you know, ahead of the curve with 1984, because now we see this kind of newspeak all the time in the 21st century.
I'm seeing it more and more. I mean, literally, they're just offering the public, join the illusion, everything's okay, as scores of Texas police departments and sheriff's departments announced, Houston did this years ago, they're getting them, they're weaponizing them. It's in the Houston Chronicle. And then they're running national news stories in hundreds of papers, Joseph, saying we made that story up. And I'm just like, what is the disconnect here?
Right. And you know, the real question is, what is the purpose of these things? You know, the one I saw, for instance, is over. I don't live in the city, okay? I don't live in a populated area. I live in one of the most rural places you could possibly live in Northern Virginia. And there could only be one thing that this drone was spying on, and that would be me. That would be my property, because there's just nothing else around except woods and deer. Unless they were doing a deer count with that drone, they were up there to look at what I was up to.
Wow, this is breaking news. We've got to get a report out on this. Not only did you see one of the little drones that they've had on the news, they admit sound like a lawnmower with the little feet on the bottom.
Right.
But you live in a rural area and you were out walking and it was obviously looking for something on your property, probably harassment. This is well, you are a terrorist. I mean, you do love liberty, right?
Guilty as charged.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we got our work cut out for us. And, you know, more and more, I recognize that the liberty lovers out there really have to stick together. Like you said, you know, we might agree or disagree on this topic or that topic. Fundamentally, if you are a liberty lover, we got to stick together, or we're going to hang together, as our founders said. And I remember, you know, I probably told you this story when you were visiting our offices a few weeks ago, that before I started WND in 1997, there was no question. I mean, we were inspired by what Drudge had been doing for a year or two at that point. And I called up Drudge to tell him what I was about to do, and I told him that I wasn't doing it to compete with him. I had, you know, a little bit different spin on how I was going to do it. I spent my whole career in journalism, was going to try to utilize some of that experience. And, you know, I told him, I see the Internet, particularly, as a cooperative medium, much more than a competitive medium. So, you know, when Alex Jones promotes Drudge, and Drudge promotes Farah, and Farah promotes Jones, it all works together for the benefit of all of us. And it's just something to keep in mind. And I know that is true of all the organizations out there, the Tea Party organization. One thing I can't stand about this Tea Party thing is, why are all these different Tea Party groups? You know, why don't they get together? Why don't they get together on a, you know, and stop competing with one another for...
Yeah, have like a Declaration of Independence where they get together.
Have a convention. Get it together, guys. You know, what are the top 10 most important issues, and let's focus on those. What's happened since 2010 when the Tea Party really awakened this country and seems to be shaking things up?
Joseph Farah is our guest. We've got one little 5-minute segment left, but I got him on 5 minutes late, so we'll take him into 5 after, into the next hour before Dr. Blaylock joins us so we can talk about a few other issues. But I have hope for this country. It's just that the people